Welcome back to my channel, guys. I just came back from Epic Universe yesterday, the brand new theme park that opened this year, 2025, at the time that I'm making this video. It opened, I believe, in May of 2025, so still only like 6 months old, this park. It's a branch off of Universal Studios, and it's not every day that you get to experience a brand new theme park, right, for the first time. So I wanted to talk about my experience there, and I also felt obligated to do so because last year around this time I went to Disney for the first time in Orlando, Florida. I always forget if it's Disneyland or Disney World, but I went to the Disney theme park in Orlando, Florida last year, and it was a miserable experience. I remember being pissed and bitter about how much I paid versus the crappy quality of my experience and just how insane the waiting times were and how overcrowded the park was, and most importantly, how complicated the experience was. That I had to download this app to be able to know what was going on and to like sometimes reserve a spot at parks. And it was just very complicated. And that video, I'll link to it at the top if you're curious to see it. But I was shocked by how much traction it received last year and how many comments, a lot of heated comments in the comment section, mostly agreeing with me saying this park is trash. Everybody was waiting for Epic Universe to open in the comment section. So here we are. Epic Universe is now open to the public, and I felt I had to compare and contrast and talk about my experience at this new theme park. Let me just start by saying overall it was a great experience. Overall, it was definitely for me better than the Disney experience. A lot simpler, a lot more modern. I want to get into specific details of that, but first, I think it's best to start with a general intro of the park. So, as I said, the park is a branch of Universal Studios, right? So, Universal Studios, of course, makes movies, and each land or neighborhood in Epic Universe is inspired by one of their cinematic ventures. Well, I guess technically Super Nintendo World is probably an exception to that. And all these neighborhoods, what I'm calling neighborhoods, revolve around one kind of like generic neighborhood, which is Celestial Park. So Celestial Park is supposed to look like this futuristic land, which by the way, I'm like, why does every theme park always feel the need to create a futuristic, I feel like Epcot has that as well for Disney. It's kind of a generic place, Celestial Park. There's a huge fountain, and then of course there's food and like kind of the generic rides you always find, like the carousel type rides. There is one huge roller coaster, which I think was the most dynamic ride that I went on at the theme park. So on the one hand, I'm like, I guess they have to keep it kind of generic because everything else revolves around that neighborhood. But I actually felt they could have made it more dynamic or even inspired by a specific cinematic theme of Universal. Why not go for like old Hollywood, something that can always stay classic versus this, to me, what felt like a generic theme of futuristic Celestial Park. But anyway, the other neighborhoods that Celestial Park connects to are Super Nintendo World, which is basically like Mario Land. This was the main reason I came, by the way, to Epic Universe. I grew up playing all kinds of Mario games. Super Mario Brothers, I think, was the oldest game, the first game I ever played on, I want to say, Super Nintendo. And then there was Mario 64, Mario Kart, Mario Party, like every Mario game, in the 90s and early 2000s, I played. So I mostly wanted to check out Super Nintendo World, but I was also curious to check out the new Harry Potter neighborhood, which is based on Paris, France. I believe one of the movies at some point takes place in Paris, so they were trying to combine that theme of Paris and Harry Potter, the Harry Potter version of Paris, France. That I was also very excited to see because Universal Studios has really done an amazing job with all their Harry Potter inspired theme park destinations. So I wanted to see that. And then the other two, I was personally not that curious to see, but I ended up really, really liking them. One is Dark Universe, which is sort of like this haunted part of the park that feels kind of Transylvania uh, inspired, meaning there's like a dark, creepy castle and just a creepy like town, which I'm sure does really well around Halloween as well. So in retrospect, that was smart of them to do, to have a neighborhood that every Halloween can kind of probably have the park revolve around it. And the final neighborhood, which is not my generation from childhood, which is probably why I couldn't have cared less about it, was all about How to Train Your Dragon, that movie. Again, I was pleasantly surprised by this and Dark Universe. So I'll talk about this later. But first, I want to start by giving the main piece of advice. The main takeaway for me was, if you really want to enjoy yourself, invest in the Express Pass. Pay for the Express Pass. My plan was to pay for the Express Pass, and it ended up being sold out by the time that I booked. And so then I had this hesitation of, maybe I should wait for another day. Maybe I had everything already planned, like I'm going to go on this day of this week. And so that kind of messed with my plans, and I hesitated to reschedule. But then I read online that the week that I went, in early November, is one of the slowest weeks of the year. So I thought, let me just do this. It's now or never. I wanted to go the first year of that this park opened in 2025. From what I read online, it gets busier and busier as Thanksgiving approaches. And then, of course, the holidays with Christmas, these parks are crazy. But I definitely felt the difference while there not having an express pass. There were a few rides. I mean, let me give you an idea of how crowded this park gets. All of these parks. It's just insane to me. Just like Disney, it wasn't as bad as Disney, but in terms of the crowds, but I just think I know these companies have to make money and the theme parks have to have a certain amount of guests per day, but it really does affect your experience when you're waiting more than an hour to ride, a 2-minute ride. So to give you an idea, and this was another reason I decided to definitely just go with it even without the express pass, the hotel I stayed at was a Universal Studios property that was actually also built for Epic Universe in 2025, also opened in 2025, this property. And by staying there, I was able to get early admission for the first hour that day. So the first hour that I was in the park, it was only, I guess, other guests staying at these Universal Studios properties. So I naively thought, oh, I'll just get all the really cool rides out of the way that first hour because there will be nobody at the park. I was wrong. Get this. Think about how insane this is. The first ride I went straight to Super Nintendo World because that was what I wanted to see the most, right? I went straight there, first ride, which was the Mario Kart ride. This is the first hour, remember. General entrance is not opened. The wait was already an hour long. An hour long. How is that even possible? The park has just opened to limited guests. It doesn't even make sense. So I'll say it again. If you really want to enjoy yourself at this park, pay up and get the express pass. Because what you don't want to have happen is, listen, I live a train ride away from Orlando, Florida. I live in Miami. It's a 3 hour and a half train ride. I can always go back. But the whole time I was there, I was thinking, just like Disney last year, I was thinking, oh man, these families who travel from across the country, or some people from another country, there were a lot of British people for whatever reason yesterday at Epic Universe. I thought they traveled the ocean to come here. I would be so pissed if I came there and I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to get to ride this ride, purely because I'm not waiting 3 hours to ride, again, a 2-minute ride. That's insane. But again, overall, I had a much better experience than Disney. And I think the main reason for me was I was so impressed by the visuals. And it makes sense, right? This park just opened, so everything is brand new and modern versus, let's say, Disney last year, where some of the rides I was like, this is janky. Like, yeah, as a kid, I would love this. Like, the It's a Small World ride. It's cute, and as a kid, it's family friendly, but you're not like inspired by how real, the robots look. Epic Universe, I was really impressed. Super Nintendo World in particular, it's so surreal to walk in there and you feel like you're in a Mario Brothers game. Just the attention to detail, like I spotted this fountain where there's coins spinning in the fountain, which if you've played these games, these Mario games, that's a thing, that the coins are just spinning, waiting for you to collect them. There's little references and like sound effects that come from the game. I also saw, obviously this is for little kids, but Mario and Luigi, like a meet and greet. So obviously people wearing a costume as Mario and Luigi. But I noticed that they were blinking, like the costume was blinking. And I was like, this is insane. Like how well executed this was. Harry Potter, same thing. The attention to detail, it's based after Paris. And as somebody who has been to Paris a million times, I noticed certain details, like even the street names and the numbers, the apartment numbers. That's how they look in Paris. There's a blue background with white font. Or I walked by this building that's supposed to look like an apartment building, and I noticed even the names of the people who live there are true, they're authentic French names. I was like, this is the attention to detail. The other cool thing, by the way, about the Harry Potter world, I didn't do this, but a lot of the people there who get really hyped up do this. They will get a wand, they will buy a wand at the park. And same thing with Super Nintendo World, they will get a watch at the park and it activates certain things. So like it's interactive where you could wave your wand and like something would show up. Or there was a fountain where you could wave the wand and water would like spurt out at you. So it's really cool, these kind of touches, this attention to detail. And I feel like if I had been there as a kid, I would have like lost it, like how immersive that is. In terms of the rides though, I enjoyed my experience at the park. I really did. But I was disappointed by the rides. I felt that they could have been better. I actually was surprised that they weren't, that considering this is a brand new park, there's been so much hype around it, so much money dumped into it. And also, again, how well executed these different neighborhoods were in terms of visuals. I just assumed the rides would be better. Super Nintendo World, for example, the rides were boring. The Mario Kart ride was silly. I thought it was silly. It was like a VR thing, a virtual, or rather AR, augmented reality. So you have to wear goggles. I personally just don't like those rides. I'd rather like actually look at the details around me. But it just felt like a silly ride to me. The other ride there is kind of a kiddie ride. There's a Yoshi ride where you're just sitting there and it's like going around the neighborhood basically. And then there was a Donkey Kong ride, which seemed more for thrill seekers. But of course, it was closed part of the day. And by the time it opened, it was like a 3 hour wait. So I didn't get to ride it. Same thing with the other neighborhoods. I just thought the rides would be, I thought there would be more rides and I thought there would be more intensive rides as well. Like Harry Potter, there was only one ride, which was the ride that I didn't get to to ride because it was closed the whole day. There was a huge line when I first got there, and then within a few hours, it was closed for the rest of the day. So think about that. If that's a huge attraction for people visiting the park, and then that one closes, there was nothing else to do. There was a show under a circus tent, and I don't really like theme park shows like performances. I just want to ride rides and walk around and explore. So I thought that was weird. I was like, how is there only one ride when I'm sure a good portion of people come here to see this Harry Potter land? I also thought, and maybe this is me being a little overly ambitious and creative, but it would have been nice for them to connect this Harry Potter world to the other Harry Potter neighborhoods at Universal Studios. Because I do know that the other two Harry Potter neighborhoods at Universal Studios at Islands of Adventure, you can get from one park to the next through the train from the movies. So it's really well done. Again, the attention to detail. Universal Studios is really good with the attention to detail. It would have been nice for them to connect it to this one as well. I guess it's a whole separate park, so they can't do that, but it would have helped connect the dots of like the mythology in Harry Potter, of you just get into a portal and you connect to these different lands. Because otherwise, again, even though the attention to detail was amazing, I kind of found it underwhelming since the one ride was closed. Like walking around is great, but the actual, rides was limited there. And so all of this leads me to my conclusion with the park, which is a funny impression to be left with. These were the two parks or the two neighborhoods that I cared most about seeing: Super Nintendo World and the Harry Potter neighborhood. And I wasn't really that keen on going to Dark Universe or the How to Train Your Dragon neighborhoods. And in the end, I was so pleasantly surprised by both of them. They had fewer people, less crowded. The rides had a shorter wait time, and both of them actually had a couple like thrill-seeking rides. And my favorite ride of the entire park was actually the Frankenstein ride at Dark Universe, which I did not expect. But again, the attention to detail, even when you're just going through the line inside this castle, that in itself was fun for me to see the visuals around.
Years I have studied and controlled the monsters that prowl the darkness, and only one remains.
And the ride itself was just so, I thought it was so well done in terms of I always forget the word, animatronics, the special effects. And How to Train Your Dragon, again, I felt it was visually stunning, just like all the other neighborhoods. So in the end, if it makes any sense to you, I actually feel like Epic Universe, in terms of the rides, isn't that interesting. But in terms of the visuals, the ambiance of each neighborhood was fantastic. And it made me actually feel like it's more like an adult theme park, if that makes sense. Like, I think adults would appreciate these nuances and details more. I could be wrong. I feel like as a child, I would have also been very impressed by how immersed you are in each neighborhood. But my favorite part of the park was just walking around and exploring the scenery that was created for this entire theme park. Would that bring me back? I don't think so. I think amazing rides would bring me back. So in terms of that, I just think the park could have executed the rides better. It's also, by the way, kind of a small park overall compared to, at least from my memory, compared to Disney and compared to the original Universal Studios park. Epic Universe is it seemed a lot smaller to me. I felt like I got around the different neighborhoods pretty quickly. So certain things I felt were kind of strange and not so well executed, but overall I was impressed, and I think the average person would be impressed by, again, the visuals and attention to detail. And certain things are just, with a new park, certain things are just so much more efficient, right? Like throughout the park, you have screens that show the wait time for all the rides of the entire park. Like stuff like that is just helpful. I remember at Disney, I was basically forced to download the app while at the park just to know what was going on, which annoyed me, that like I couldn't just rely on my instincts and exploring on foot. I had to stare at my screen to keep up with what was happening with rides. And so that was well done with Epic Universe. The other thing that I thought was so genius, which maybe I'm just old and out of touch, but I thought this was so cool, that the rides that are more intensive, like roller coasters, you have to leave your stuff in a locker, which is standard. But these lockers are so modern that they work through photo verification. So you just show up, it takes a photo, and that's how it recognizes you on the way out of the ride so that you can grab your stuff. So you don't have to remember a code, you don't have to carry a key or something. These lockers are free, just so well executed and so simple. And then on your way out, you actually grab your stuff from the other side of the lockers. So it has basically two doors to open them, from the front and from the back. So think about how efficient that is, that you're not constantly crossing paths with newcomers to the ride. It's like there's a flow to everything. That's it for my take on Epic Universe. If you've been to the park, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree? Do you have other thoughts? Anything else that I didn't think to mention that you think is important for people to know? If you haven't been, let me know if you have any questions about it. My next video that I upload will be just footage from the park, no commentary like this video. So if you're curious to just see more of what the park actually looks like from somebody visiting, make sure to stay tuned for that video, and I will catch you guys next time.